Precisa ferir a pressão, medir a glicemia ou tomar uma vacina? Na Drogasil tem exames, testes e calendário vacinal completo. E o que é melhor, tem sempre uma Drogasil aí perto de você. É fácil, prático e rápido. Dá para ir entre uma música e outra. Procure nossos farmacêuticos. Quanto mais você conhece o que a gente faz na Drogasil, mais você se cuida. O que acende a sua vontade de começar algo? Tem uma faísca em você que te chama para empreender, investir, dar novos rumos para sua vida. E para todos os seus começos, você pode contar com Santander Select. Um banco mais pessoal, mais próximo, mais humano. Um time de especialistas com olhar atento para cada momento da sua vida. Porque você sabe, só quem já deu muitos passos está pronto para continuar começando. Santander Select. Começa em você, começa agora.
The Athletic.
Big cat, small opposition for Monaco 1-2. Porsche pole potential postponed. The real Van Dorn returns at last. And teenage kicks for McLaren as Barnard designs dramatic debut. Hello, I'm Andrew Vanderberg. This is the Formula E podcast brought to you by The Race. And today we'll be looking back at all the dramatic goings-on from the Monaco E-Prix. Joining me as always is The Race's Formula E correspondent, Sam Smith. And Sam, you've got a special guest joining us for the second part of this show. Anyone who listened to the last show will need no guessing as who that might be. But after Monaco, how are you feeling?
Yeah, very good actually. Yeah, it was my birthday weekend, so I got treated to a cake and a few glasses of champagne. I was nearly said bottles of champagne. It wasn't quite that extreme, but
nice.
yeah, Jaguar were very nice to me on the Friday night. So, but as you know, it wasn't a special one. It was only my 33rd. So you know,
yeah, save that for next year.
Exactly,
maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah. No comment on anything I may be about to go through later this year.
The happy half century.
Shh. So, lot to talk about, but I guess it is one of those ones where it's what happened at the front that's the main talking point. So Jaguar only at second 1-2, which is, hard to imagine that. They've been competitive for so long now. I assume they'd had more than that, but one that was genuinely manufactured. You know, they orchestrated in a way I don't think we've seen successfully managed that often in Formula E to make that 1-2 almost answer their tune.
Yeah, it usually goes the other way, doesn't it? We always talk about choreography or orchestration or whatever you want to call it intra-team, and it usually ends in tantrums and tears, but it didn't this time. So, fair play to Jaguar. They did exactly what they needed to do. They were strong all weekend. That it didn't go entirely to plan in qualifying. They arguably probably should have had at least one car on the front row, if not both.
Well, when they got to the two semis, the odds on the screen, they were both sort of high 70s, almost 80% to win those races, and didn't manage either of them. Yeah,
and two driver mistakes. Nick Cassidy got a bit of a tank slapper on at the swimming pool and lost time, and then Mitch Evans ran over the chicane and lost a load of time as well. So they were on the second row of the grid, and from there I think that there were several junctures of the race which really swung it in Mitch Evans' favour. One was getting the jump on Nick at the start of the race. Nick got a bit of wheel spin and Mitch was up into third place. And then there was that really surprising early attack mode that Pascal Wehrlein took. He looked comfortable in the lead, decided he didn't want track position at the front of the field and took the earliest available attack mode and slipped back to fourth position. And from that point on, Mitch Evans and Nick Cassidy really just orchestrated the pace, managed the pace, judged their attack modes very, very intelligently, and got into position to make a 1-2. And from a pretty early stage in the race, it was set. There wasn't going to be any do or die moves from Nick Cassidy and jeopardise a Jaguar 1-2 in Monaco, the race that he was defending because he won it there last year. But a very let's call it an accomplished team performance, squad performance from Nick Cassidy in particular, in ensuring that there wasn't any unnecessary incidents that could have jeopardised that perfect result for the big cat.
Yeah, do you think this is a product of the fact that, you know, everyone's talked about how they're old childhood friends or whatever, but is this actually that manifesting itself in the way that the teams operated? Had it been one of any of their previous teammates, this wouldn't have been so easy to make it play out, would it?
Yeah, I tend to agree on that. I think the fact that they do work so well together and they have a mutual understanding and they know each other extremely well only helped. And I've never, we spoke about this in the last episode, I've never seen any hint of bitterness or jealousy or envy or anything between them, apart from a good professional relationship, and one that they know if they work it right, then, you know, they could be in a very good position come London at the end of the season. I think then there'll be an element of gloves off, but you tend to think that even with these two, it'll be kind of one glove off rather than both. So yeah. I think
it's more of a sparring match than an actual title.
Yeah, I think so. Let's go for some more boxing analogies, because Anthony Joshua was in the house, actually.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I had to go, but he parried most of my shots in the media centre when I stumbled across him.
Could have been a contender, son.
Could have been a contender. No, I think there was a real good feeling around Jaguar last weekend. Off track as well, they committed to Gen 4, which we'll talk about a bit later, but the way that they managed that race, it was as probably perfect as you get. You know, they got everything bar the pole position from the weekend, and that was through really small driver errors. So I think it's a very happy, content squad. They extended their lead in the team's championship. Mitch is now, you would say, much more in contention for having a crack at the driver's title too. And a nice story all round, and particularly for Mitch Evans, who did what he had to do. There wasn't much fighting that he had to do, really. The crucial part was getting jumping Stoffel van Dorn. When he did his attack modes strategically, it was a bit of a masterclass really from Jaguar TCS Racing, Mitch and Nick, and a nice emotional one for Nick as well, because just the week before he lost his mentor and patron for many years, Sir Colin Giltrap, who we both know actually from A1GP a little bit, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Involved with Team New Zealand there. A nice guy, extremely enthusiastic racer.
Massively enthusiastic racer.
Yeah.
I think he ran just about every car import to New Zealand, apart from, I think it was maybe Toyota or something, but just about every other manufacturer did. So he played a hand in probably every major young Kiwi racer. I know Scott Dixon mentioned him when he did that amazing drive at Long Beach, and Brendan Hartley was part of it as well. But an amazing legacy what he did for New Zealand motorsport, because you think for the number of people at that country, they punch so far above their weight, and he was enormously influential in making that happen.
Yeah, a very accomplished guy and a nice guy, and yeah, it was nice of Mitch Evans to sort of pay tribute to Sir Colin after the race, and a terrific weekend all round for the Jags. But I sense that they're going to have it much more difficult. I think they knew they were going to be strong at Monaco. There's only double headers now. There's 4 double headers coming up at Berlin, Shanghai.
Got the randomness of Tempelhof with its unusual track surface.
Yeah. And some of those tracks won't suit Jaguar particularly well, so they had to maximise Monaco, and they did it. They got it done pretty convincingly.
So you mentioned Wehrlein and his slightly unusual attack mode. When watching at home, it did strike me as being, because even though there's way more overtaking in Formula E race at Monaco than there is in Formula 1 race, it's still not that easy. And I thought it was more of a track position race than an energy consumption race. So take us through what was going on with Pascal in that race.
Yeah, well, I spoke to both Pascal and Florian Modlinger at Porsche afterwards, and the theory behind it was that they didn't want to lead those early laps, that they wanted to duck back into the slipstream. I think what changed it for them was the fact that they had 2 teams in good position in Jaguar and DS Penske right at the front, and Antonio Felix da Costa was initially there, but got caught up in that log jam at the hairpin with Sete Camara and Buemi, and lost and got shuffled down to I think 17th from that. So he was out of it in terms of helping him do what Jaguar and DS Penske went on to do in that sort of first half of the race. That combined with the early attack and falling back and losing the track position really hurt him. And there was also something else which only got discovered the day after the race. And Pascal mentioned it to me, and when I was transcribing, I went back over it and studied it and went back and looked into it during the race. And it was missed by the TV cameras, but through a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, I managed to get some on board looked into.
Was it a secret dossier exchanged behind the bins?
Of course, as it always is with me. Yeah, no, it was just literally looking over the shoulder at somebody's laptop in the pits and seeing what was going on. And what actually happened was that when Mortara crashed his Mahindra at the swimming pool, initially a yellow came out, a double wave yellow came out, and when it did first time, that was the first yellow that came out. That Verline and Verne, who were then third and fourth, they came into Casino Square, and Verne peeled off to get his attack mode. And obviously Pascal had taken his, so didn't take it and took the normal line. And as a consequence, obviously overtook Jean-Eric.
Oh, so he was done for passing under yellows?
He was done for passing under yellows.
Right, that's
and
nice,
he was told, the team were told by the race director, I believe, Scott Elkins, that he had to give the position back, which he duly did so. However, having looked at the footage that I've seen, I believe it certainly looks ever so slightly that that Pascal Verline didn't take Jean-Eric Verne until before the yellow. He actually didn't pass as he came to the first yellow, which is significant because if he had have stayed ahead of Jean-Eric Verne, he could feasibly have taken Stoffel Vandoorne when the second attacks came on, because he'd have been closer to him, and he would then have latched onto the Jaguars. It could have been an entirely different race. So I don't know. I haven't spoken to Porsche. I don't know if they are looking into this, or I mean, nothing retrospectively can be done anyway. But obviously, I think in light of certain flashpoints with Porsche and FIA, I don't think this is going to help ease the some of the tensions between them, let's say. But it was super close. But it does look for all the world that the wrong call was made there, and I think maybe some of the teams, particularly Porsche, might be sort of asking questions as to, is there a different procedure that can be looked at? You know,
well, that needs a clarification, doesn't it? Because otherwise, it's just an attack mode free for all as soon as those yellow comes out, because the person behind will have to do nothing but back off and let you hold position.
Yeah, exactly. And Lucas Di Grassi went through the same thing further down the field, and also had to give up a position. And I understand just through speaking to people in and around Lucas that he's unhappy about that, because he feels that he didn't. Verline certainly felt that he didn't pass under yellows, and the evidence from what I've seen suggests that he doesn't. But look, it's happened now, and it sort of defined Pascal's race. He did get some decent points, finished in 5th place, but obviously from pole position there was an air of disappointment from, especially in light of the Jaguars doing so well and getting that one too.
Yeah, pole to 5th is never something worth jumping up and down about, is it? No matter how much that might be useful points in the long run. Like you say, a strong showing from DS Penske. Vandoorne, like the old Vandoorne back finally. I mean, it's been a pretty underwhelming start to the season. Apparently it's his first podium since Seoul 2022.
Incredible. Yeah, I was astonished by that, but he did have a bit of a barren season.
Oh, I forgot we'd even had a race in Seoul, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time ago now, 18 months ago. More actually, isn't it? I mean, Vandoorne had a very middling season last year, finding his feet at DS Penske. New rule set, new car, new way of working, new culture. You can give him that. He's an ex-champion, and he got pole position, and he got some reasonable results, but not quite on the podium where he should be really. That car isn't the easiest in terms of the all-round package. It's been there or thereabouts, but certainly is not a Porsche or a Jaguar powertrain car in terms of its efficiency and even the mechanical understanding of the car. They're not quite on top of it as the others, that's for sure, and that's reflected in the performances. Stoffel has been quick. He's already got a pole position this season. He's been there sort of tickling the top 6 often, never got a result, but he did do it this time. I mean, Jean-Eric Vergne wasn't particularly happy after the race. He felt as though he could have been released and at least had a crack at the Jaguars.
See, there's how your inter-team dynamic works if you've got 2 super competitive ex-champions who aren't school boyfriends.
Well, this may be true. This may be true. I mean, Stoffel van Dorn and Jean-Eric Vergne get on perfectly well. I think it's more...
Oh, not suggesting anything other than that, but I mean, Jev is intensely competitive, right?
Yeah.
And any sort of personal relationships there are out the window if there's a podium on the line, right?
Of course they are. Always been the case. And you can kind of see some of his frustration that maybe he could have had a crack, and then he said afterwards that he would have let Stoffel back through on the last lap or whatever. Would he? I'm not too sure about that.
I'd like to see that put to the test.
Yeah, I mean, I think the comms were a bit fruity and fraught between the team, but that's one of the reasons that one of the things that Phil Charles is there for, to try and get these strategic masterclasses in place with what's already there at DS Penske, which is a team that feels quite in transition at the minute. Nigel Beresford left the team just before Monaco. In circumstances that aren't particularly haven't got a great deal of clarity on them, but Nigel has left and he's been replaced. And there seems,
I mean, that is a Penske, through and through, right? I mean, when did Nigel start? Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Goes back to the early 90s with Penske over in Indycar, and then obviously worked with the Dragon when it was formed in Formula 10 years ago. So yeah, I'm sure we'll see Nigel again. He's too good not to be in another role very soon. But yeah, a team in transition, DS Penske at the moment. It feels that way, and we'll have to see. We'll have to see if this is a bit of a launch pad for them. But I think Monaco suited them quite well. They really did hit their strategy nicely, and got their best. I think it's their best combined point score for almost 2 years as well. No, sorry, Hyderabad last season when Vergne won and Van Dorn got some points. So yeah, I mean, a good turnaround for them. So hopefully they can use it to get the second part of the season, and get into the sort of top 4 of the team's points now.
So you mentioned that all the remaining events are double headers, but that does mean that we're effectively now at the halfway point in the championship. So just a quick rundown for people. Vergne is currently at the top of the standings with 102 points, followed by Cassidy on 95, and then you've got Dennis on 89, Rowland on 88, then a bit of a gap back to Mitch Evans on 77, then another big gap back to Max Gunter on 6 and Jean-Eric Vergne both on 65. I think anyone after that, there's almost 30 points back to Sam Bird after that. So I think we can probably count out everybody else. So are those 7 all fighting for it, or is that giving people like Jev and Gunter a little bit more stake in the outcome than perhaps they actually really have?
I think so. I think really my point of view really is that it's between Vergne, Cassidy, Dennis and Evans. I mean, no disrespect to Oliver Rowland because he's had a sensational season, but...
And so you're counting Rowland out, are you?
I actually, after the pre-season Nostradamus that I say Antonio Felix da Costa would win the championship, I'm not making any more predictions. And the fact that I said that Maserati would tank, I'm not the person to ask about predictions.
You're not doing particularly brilliantly there, right?
No, but I would say that I still would go with the Porsche or Jaguar champion ultimately. And I think, I mean, all round with consistency, apart from the second race in Misano, the first race in Misano, Pascal Wehrlein has scored in every championship race. Nick Cassidy's just got 2 non-scores. Jake Dennis, bit of a worry from Monaco. It's not a circuit he enjoys. They were really nowhere at the weekend and just didn't just got involved in too many scuffles, and Jake had some damage.
But he'll be back though.
Yeah.
He's good at Tempelhof. It's
Yeah, I think Shanghai is going to be one of the crucial races. It's an unknown, probably a high energy race, and then of course you've got Portland following it, which is an Uber peloton style race. So anything could happen there. Silly little accidents as we saw in Misano could define the championship. Oliver Rowland was really good in Misano, could be super good in Portland as well. Got a lot of momentum, a lot of confidence in him. He is I think he's the outsider in those 5 drivers. Max Gunter entirely capable on his day, but I don't see Maserati MSG being consistently a championship protagonist. Jean-Eric Vergne, no, I think he'll get more podiums and potentially a win, but not a title, not in the title hunt. So I think really it's Verline, Cassidy, Dennis, and Evans. I think are the four that will ultimately, one of those will ultimately be the champion.
Yeah, be really interested to see what comes out. And of course, with, like you say, the couple of certainly unknown in Shanghai, and that if we do get another random race like we did in Misano in Portland, I mean, anyone could end up winning that, couldn't they? So all to play for there. You briefly mentioned the safety car that was caused by Edo Mortara's sizable accident. Got a bit more info on exactly what happened there, because when you first saw the replay, it looked like he just was a bit offline and understeered into the barriers, but there was a bit more to it than that, right?
Seemingly so, yeah. It seems like they found an issue, or that they were certainly looking into an issue with the car. There were initial rumours that it could have been a powertrain shutdown, and it just left him going straight into the barriers. That, I understand, wasn't the case, that it was something else. I mean, it could be a number of things. The team were still investigating it on Monday morning after Monaco. So we'll just have to wait and see. But it was something that must have affected either the steering or I mean, even braking into there. You're not necessarily braking into that corner, it's kind of,
it's not a normal place to have an accident.
No, it's not. It was very strange, and big whack for Mortara. I believe that the chassis is damaged, so another car that'll have to go back to Dallara, and they'll have to revert to a spare for Berlin. But I mean, the main thing was he was all right. I mean, these cars are strong, but they, we'll go on to talk about Sam Bird's accident. In some ways, they do contribute to injuries, which has been proven in several incidents now. Yeah,
just before we get on to that, one other incident, we mentioned you mentioned the recovery drives of Rowland and Costa, and that's because of a sort of snafu that happened at the hairpin. I mean, classic Monaco incident.
It was. It reminded me of Andrea de Cesaris and Nelson Piquet in 1989. Yeah. If anyone hasn't seen that, go to YouTube and find that, because it's absolutely hilarious. Sete Camera sort of put one down the inside of the pavement, used the pavement on the inside of...
And again, a classic Monaco.
Yeah, of the Lowe's...
Hook one wheel over there. What could possibly go wrong?
Lowe's hairpin. I still call it Lowe's hairpin. It's not been Lowe's hairpin for about 25 years, but I still call it Lowe's hairpin. And knock-on effect. Buemi got shunted into the barriers. Da Costa got penned in. I mean, it was like sort of Sainsbury's car park at any given Sainsbury's on a Saturday lunchtime. And
the supermarkets are available, unless Sainsbury's want to sponsor the show, in which case they're the best ones out there.
And it was just a bit embarrassing, really. And Buemi was fuming afterwards. Da Costa had a go at Sete Camera in the media pen, which was a nice bit of cabaret for us all. All a bit messy, all a bit unnecessary. But how many times have we seen it through there? I mean, it's like it's the whole Nelson Piquet thing, isn't it? Riding flying a helicopter
bicycle in your living room.
It's sort of changed over the years, hasn't it, from bicycle, helicopter, whatever, but you get the idea. Just no room there at all. I think they're apexing there at like 24 miles an hour or something ridiculous.
It doesn't sound like a Formula One. No. Oh, look at the speeds they generate. Yeah, 24 miles an hour.
I mean,
of a full lock.
Can you imagine sticking that thing in a new circuit, a new Grand Prix track? I mean, it wouldn't even get through the feasibility study, would it? But it's Monaco, so it gets away with all sorts. But it is an infuriating place for driver and spectator sometimes, and makes everyone look a bit daft. But there you go.
But despite being delayed, they both, Rowland and Da Costa, did a decent job to get back to 6th and 7th from there. Like, as I said earlier, overtaking is much easier than it is in the Grand Prix, but you don't give the places away, do you?
No. Rowland wasn't particularly delayed there. He just qualified poorly. Just couldn't get his tyres lit up in qualifying.
Yes.
But Da Costa was, and then slipped back and came back really, really spectacularly well. Rowland just did a good job, was working with Fenestras quite nicely for a bit early doors, and then just made his way through, made a number of really good moves and got into position. And then Da Costa and Rowland were battling pretty furiously towards the end, and Oliver got him, I think, as it went green after the Muller incident in the second half of the race, and managed to jump Antonio and get that sixth place. So the run of points for Oliver continues. Taking away that disqualification in Misano, he's having a cracking season and very happy in his new role in his second phase at Nissan.
So we had a Formula E debutant at Monaco, Taylor Barnard. So A, who is he? And B, how did he get onto the grid?
Well, he's no relation to John Barnard. That's the one thing that I can say, even though he's at McLaren. He's a youngster who's been up through this karting and single-seater ladder. Drove with Genza last season in F3. He's having his second year in F3 this season. Has been part of the McLaren stable since Valencia last year at the test, and turned up there, did a very good job. And then he had his second test at Misano a couple of weeks ago and posted the fastest time there, and did a terrific job. Really impressed people like Gary Paffett, Ian James and Albert Lau, who are very experienced people within that team, and previously Mercedes EQ. So they've got real high regard for him. And there he was on Saturday morning, just stirring his coffee and looking at the timing screens, and all of a sudden Sam Bird's in the wall. Strange accident, very low speed accident, but he just missed the Tech Pro and hit the belt of tyres. And I hear that he may have damaged his hand as it came back and hit the side of the steering wheel. So, it either at that speed, when you have either wheel to wheel or wheel to barrier contact, the steering just flips the wheel. Yes. So your hand either gets smashed into the tub or it gets caught on the steering wheel itself. And I'm not sure which, but I think it was more the steering wheel that Sam hit his hand on. And unfortunately, he's broken the same bone in his left hand that he broke at London Excel in 2022.
Oh, what are the chances?
Yeah, I know. So really bad luck for Sam there. Just an innocuous looking accident. But again, I'm doing a piece in a couple of days' time on the -race.com looking into this, because in my records, this is the sixth incident where drivers have had hand injuries of various degrees, the most serious of which was Robin Frijns, undoubtedly, at Mexico last year. And this is being looked at by the FIA, and the drivers are very concerned about it, and there has to be some solutions down the line, because you can't have these incidents with the threat of breaking your hand when they're at 30 miles an hour. I mean, it's just not something that anyone wants to see. So there has to be some kind of solution, whether it's MotoGP style gloves, or whether it's a change in the sort of suspension settings and the steering column itself. It needs to be looked at for at least the Gen 4 period, because this is now getting to be a series of misadventures for drivers, and it's causing drivers to miss races. And in the worst case scenario, you can have a potentially career-threatening injury if it's really bad. And Robin Frijns wasn't far off that. He missed 4 races, and it was a really nasty injury that required several surgeries. So it's a serious issue that we're going to dig deep into and sort of stress test some of the ins and outs of that topic in the coming days.
It's an interesting one to know how they can fix that, because obviously the cars, there's a lot of wheel-to-wheel action in Formula E, so they need to be robust enough to withstand that. You don't want the wheel suddenly detaching just because they've had a bit of a ding-dong there, but at the same time, because they often do end up in the wall, because there isn't, by the nature of the tracks, there isn't much runoff. There's got to be a better solution. I just have no idea what that is. How long do we think Sam's going to be out for?
It's yet to be defined. We're expecting McLaren to confirm that Taylor Barnard will be back in the car for Berlin at least. I think probably in Sam's head, having been through this sort of injury before, he in his mind, a positive mind that he has, he'll be looking at the Shanghai race at the end of May. But it could well go beyond that. It could be that he doesn't drive again until Portland. It's a sensitive area of the body for a racing driver, isn't it? Your hand, you need them, and it's got to be completely right.
As we know, the chances of it being damaged again are high, right?
Yeah, and if you've got pins and things in it from last time, or they often say, don't they, that bones grow back stronger, but I'm pretty sure of my basic sort of physiological knowledge that it's not a good thing to break bones several times. So I'm sure he'll be okay. Those are guy. His manager, Alexander Jacobi, was telling me he's a very good healer. So I think he'll be back sooner than later. But I imagine that Taylor Barnard will be back in. And look, if he does a job like he did at Monaco, I think it's going to be exciting to see his progress, because I thought he was superb.
Yeah, it'd be good to see him actually have a proper weekend, some free practice time and whatever. Not that I want to see Sam out of the car, but I also would prefer him to heal and recover properly. So
yeah, and you know when a driver is impressed with what he's done when afterwards in the media pen several experienced drivers come up and shake his hand and pat him on the back.
Oh, that's always
they don't need to do that,
no.
But they recognised he was in the deep end and he didn't sink and he swam. So yeah, fair play.
We did our title challenges early on, and there were obviously 2 Jaguar powered cars completely missing. Defending teams champion Vision Racing are having a season or certainly a mid-season to forget. Look at your notes. 4 points from the last 5 races. That's outrageous.
Yeah, it's fairly miserable, isn't it? Yeah, we talked about them in the last pod, and we presume that they'd be back getting big points again. They've got one of the best packages on the grid. I actually sort of analyse this and try to understand why this has happened. And it's not for a lack of pace, and it's not for a lack of...
well, they've got a good package, haven't they?
They've got a good package, they've got great drivers. What's happening is that they're just, more often than not, missing out on the duels. So they're mid-grid, upper mid-grid. So Robin Fry's we missed out by 0.002 of a second in Monaco. And what that does... Which
is literally nothing. I mean, that's centimetres.
Yeah, what that does is it puts you right in the midfield. And if just... the number of times that drivers make contact in that brutal mid-pack, or even anywhere in the pack, really, you're at the mercy of the front wing. You're at the mercy of the tyres, and they're just picking up too many incidents in that midfield maelstrom. Robin Frijns and Sebastian Buemi. Buemi was completely innocent, by the way, in Sebastian Buemi does seem to get into these situations where he is just the innocent party. He's not innocent all the time, because he's like all the rest of them. He gets his elbows out, but actually this one, there was, he was just complete bystander in Sete Camara's bit of kamikaze hairpin manoeuvre there, and got shunted out, and that just rendered him an also ran, and he just lost too much time, and that was it. There was no chance of points. And Robin Frijns has had several of those as well. I can't see really, apart from finding that 0.002 of a second, how they're going to sort of rectify that. I mean, they've just got to have some cleaner races, and I think at Berlin, China and Portland and London they will have those. So I anticipate... Oh,
you could see them winning a race, definitely.
Yes,
but
for sure.
As a title defence goes, it's dire, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're 8th in the standings. To put it into perspective, they are only 18 points ahead of ERT. And they are 131 points behind Jaguar. So it's a desperate time for Envision Racing. They are not used to this. They never go through these real difficult famines of points. Yet they haven't scored any points in the last 3 races at all. And before that, it was just 4 races. And it was just 2 at Tokyo. So yeah, very, very desperate times. But I think when we look at the second half of the season, and it comes to us talking about the season review in late July, I think that I'd be amazed if they're 8th in the standings. I think they could easily get into 5th or 6th, probably 6th at this stage. But why not 5th? DS Penske are there potentially for the taking. So let's see. They'd be disappointed if they're not in the top. If they're not in the top 6, it will be an absolute disaster. But they should get into the top 6 if they stay out of trouble, which they haven't done in the first half of the season.
Right, so there's a few bits of news over the course of the Monaco weekend. Let's start with the 3.5 car. There was lots of people getting all excited about some 0-60 figures, which frankly I really couldn't care less about, because what impact does that have on a lap time? Virtually none. But if people want to post that everywhere to be all interested in, good for them. What I'm interested in is what they've done to the front wing, which looks a much more robust practical solution than the one that's currently on the car. So what do we know?
Yeah, I mean, on that front wing, it's obviously extremely I mean, it's needed. We've seen so many of these front wings being scattered all over the racetrack and causing accidents as well when it goes underneath the wheels of the car. It needs to be a more robust piece. It seemingly is. They're going to have Spark have designed something or built something, manufactured something a lot more durable, and I think that'll have
looks a bit Gen 1.
Yeah, there is that element to it. The second iteration of the Gen 1, there is that sort of dual element, isn't there, that is fixed at the end plate. And I just think this will give a bit more protection on contact at the front. And, hopefully we won't have some of the debris scattered all over the track and it affecting people's races too much. It can go the other way. The Gen 2 was probably too robust and, tactical contact became a part and parcel of the race. But look, hopefully this is in the middle of their other things to look out for. Obviously, they're going to have the active nature of the front powertrain, so it's essentially going to be essentially going to be a four-wheel drive car at stages during the race. It should free up the attack mode much more in terms of making it actually something that can be used during the race rather than...
And that's potentially very exciting because it's just not working well enough at the minute.
Yeah, it's not. And the reason for that is that the drivers just can't get the traction, get the power down. And I think that, in terms of the spec FPK being used actively in conjunction with the new Hankook tyres, which I'm told are much better than, or much softer and pliable than the current ones, should see lap times come down in the region of at least 1.5 to 2 seconds, and we should have better racing.
That's a tangible performance benefit, rather than 1.9 seconds to 60 or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the acceleration is a nice headline, and obviously there's all the recycled sustainable materials that they're using and so forth, which is all great stuff. But ultimately, we want to see the sporting format to its full potential, used to its full potential, and the attack mode has just been a sort of it's just not really been doing what it's designed to do, and it's useless during the races. So we need to get that back into the framework of the races so that the strategy is much more open and we can get more interesting variables at the front of the field.
Yep, I'm looking forward to that. So this will come in for the start of next season, yeah?
That's right, yeah. This is known as Gen 3 Evo, and they've already started testing it. So if Porsche had a test between Misano and Monaco where they tested this, and the other manufacturers are going to start pretty soon as well. There will be a collective test, I think, later on in the summer with the manufacturers, and then there'll probably, there definitely will be another pre-season test at Valencia where all the customer teams will get the bodywork upgrades as well. So there's an interesting case actually about the fact that the manufacturers now have much earlier testing of this package than the customer teams, who I know some of them feel as though they're slightly on the back foot. But look, that's the nature of the way that Formula E is run. It's there's nice parity in the powertrain and everything that customers get from the manufacturer motherships. But at the same time, they're a little bit behind on the initial testing, which actually is, you can understand how that can evidence itself during the races, but again, the season that we had last year saw Envision win the championship, didn't it? So it doesn't have much effect over the duration of a season, it seems.
The other bit of news, which you briefly mentioned at the top of the show, was Jaguar committing to the Gen 4. So that's their man Nissan now. Good news for the championship and good for Jaguar that they're carrying on with their only factory racing program.
Yes, it is. And, I think we were both there at the Shard, weren't we, back in 2015 when they announced their return to international competition. And, Jaguar are one of those big manufacturers that everyone wants to see on the international stage and competing at the top level. It started off slowly. They hit the milestones pretty quickly after that. And really by the start of the Gen...
Whatever happened with Cooking with Carol?
I beg your pardon?
Do you not remember they used to do this social media thing of cooking with Carol? So whenever they went to a local track, then Adam Carroll would be cooking a fondue or a... Do you not remember this?
I don't remember that. Bypass me now. I know Adam really well. I'm going to go to his pizza place in Ulster, actually.
Well, see if he'll do a bit of cooking with Carol. You can, I don't know, make a calzone or something.
Excellent. A calzone, yeah.
Hey, there we go.
I spoke to James Barkley at length, and I spoke to the drivers too about this, and again, there was a real big feel-good story, feel-good vibe around Jaguar TCS Racing, and their rationale is that Jaguar Land Rover has got this big electrification policy going forward for the next 10 years or so, and they want to really push all electric engineering and get a lot of new models of Jaguar Land Rovers out there quickly. I think the first one is this year, if I remember rightly, and they're investing a lot. They've got a new big plant in Merseyside, and they're expanding in terms of their workforce and their infrastructure. Jaguar Racing have a new headquarters in Kedlington, the sort of the spiritual home of Jaguar Racing from the 80s with TWR. So there's a lot of nice correlations of where they're going and what they want to do. They've got a big program of electrification, and that's spearheaded by the Reimagine program, which is very interesting how they're actually doing that incrementally with tying in marketing through sport, through what they're doing in Formula E, and they want more of it. So the next key one is, from a Gen 4 perspective, is Porsche, and we're hearing that a decision could be confirmed by the end of May, potentially. So what that decision is, we don't know. Everyone hopes that it is of the positive rather than the negative, but it's a big OEM, a big manufacturer, and things do change. So it's going to be interesting to see if Porsche stick around for another rule set. And then I think if they do, and then Stellantis and Mahindra go with them in terms of keeping all of the manufacturers in, and then we've got the addition of Lola Yamaha, of course, and then a potential other one, then it's all
in good shape.
It's already looking like a sort of a second epoch of strong foundations for Formula E. So yeah, I think there's I think Jeff Dodds and the exec team at Formula E are sort of quietly confident as it stands that they're going to have at least 6 manufacturers for the next generation.
Good segue. Talking of the exec team, high-profile new addition, Beth Paretta has joined. Motorsport fans might know her for running the Paretta Indycar entry. Was it last year or the year before that ran Catherine?
22. Yeah, at the Brickyard. Yeah. Yeah, she was there. I spotted her in the paddock on, I think, Friday morning, and then did a bit of sniffing around and found out that she was going to join the championship in a sporting role, which is very interesting. Obviously, she's done a lot of work in diversity, and that team, I think, ran with certainly the vast majority were women in that team.
The initial aim was for it to be all female.
That's
I'm not
right.
sure if that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was affiliated to Penske, wasn't it, for that season?
Yeah.
And then Simona Di Silvestro did a few races, I think, last year, didn't she too? So it's I've not met her. I've heard lots about her, and certainly Jeff Dodds is excited on getting her on board, and and bringing lots of experience and ideas to the table for Formula E going forward.
Well, that sounds like another great segue. So, Sam, you had a chat with Jeff, which we're going to listen to in a minute. Now, I think we need to clarify that perhaps he was standing in what might be considered a bit of an inconsiderate place to do an interview. Prior to throw into this.
The sound quality might not be absolutely spot on, but it's worth listening to, because as ever, Jeff's got a lot of things to say about Formula E, and I put several questions to him. But if he does initially sound as though he's doing a Tom Cruise and hanging off a helicopter, don't worry, he actually wasn't, but he was in the close proximity of it. But here's the chat with Jeff, talking about Monaco on and off track, and various other things in between. Welcome to the pod, Jeff.
Hey Sam, how are you?
All good. We're only a couple of days on from the halfway point, having been reached in this year's championship. So What's been both, I suppose, the highlight and the surprise for you so far this season as we get to 50% of the 23-24 campaign?
So we come fresh off of Monaco, Sam, where we obviously spent a bit of time together. And I mean, it's difficult to have a weekend in Monaco racing cars and not feel like that's a highlight. Historic racing circuit, 95 years of racing on the streets of Monaco. So it always feels a privilege to be in Monaco. I would say in terms of the racing, maybe my highlight would be the incredible Sam Bird and Ollie Rowland finish in Sao Paulo. That felt to me, that was a special moment. And to see, you had Emerson Fittipaldi there and Felipe Massa, and Emerson had obviously, won for McLaren, I think, in Brazil, and it was McLaren's first win in Formula E. So that felt like my highlight. I guess the low light, without wanting to get too serious too quickly, was probably the change in government in Telangana in India, and when the Hyderabad race, the Hyderabad E-Prix, fell out of the schedule fairly late in the day. That was a big disappointment for me. Not wanting just to lose a race, that's disappointing. But obviously we have a number of Indian partners. We've got TCS in the Jaguar team, Tata. We've got Mahindra as a racing team, J-Ham racing for Maserati. So that was a particular disappointment. So they would probably be at the opposite ends of the continuum for me. The first McLaren win, the great Sam Bird overtake, and then losing the Indian race.
As we came away from Monaco, there's always a good feel-good factor from that race. I remember actually in 2021 when a few weeks before we'd been to Valencia for generally a pretty disastrous weekend over there for several reasons. By the end of it, everyone had forgotten. By the end of Monaco, that is, everybody had forgotten about those issues. And 2 weeks later, we were celebrating a great race, an event. It's a big, glamorous, shiny bauble of a race, Jeff. Was it particularly dazzling for you this year? I mean, there was a lot of big news out there. There was a lot of feel-good factor over the race, which delivered again. How do you appraise the whole 24 Monaco event?
So I'll answer the question in two ways, Sam. I'll answer it as a CEO of Formula E, and then maybe as just a racing fan. So as a CEO of Formula E, it wasn't just a race weekend for us because we had a couple of very big announcements off the racetrack. So first big announcement was we launched our Gen 3 Evo car, so the car that will take to the tracks from the start of next season. So in about, 8 months' time, 9 months' time, something like that. And that's a car that looks different to the Gen 3 car. So it's got a complete design refresh, but perhaps most importantly, performs completely differently. So 0 to 60 in 1.82 seconds. So 30% faster than the Formula One car does currently, and significantly faster than our Gen 3 car is currently. So we launched a new car. So that was exciting. Be interested to get your views on Gen 3 Evo in a minute. We also, though, had the big announcement from Jaguar. So Jaguar announced their commitment to Gen 4, which means they'll be part of the Formula E family until at least 2030, hopefully longer. So there were two very big off-track announcements. And then we had the race, and the race attended by Prince Albert of Monaco II, very historic event. Crowds were there, 20-odd thousand people around Monaco for the race, so it was very well supported. And the race itself, was a good race. I thought it was a good race. I think Monaco is one of the more challenging tracks to have exciting racing on. We had a couple of thrills and spills. Sam Bird very unfortunately broke his wrist in an accident. We had another accident on track. And we had this kind of strange thing. For the first time I've ever seen it, we had kind of the teams ending up racing for a long time in pairs on the leaderboard. You had the two Jaguars up front, you had the two DS Penskes in second, and you had the two Porsches, the two Nissans. So they kind of ended up in pairs on the leaderboard. But Jaguar dominated that race. I thought they raced absolutely brilliantly. So all in all, my view would be a very, very successful race weekend. And as you say, when everyone comes away from Monaco, first of all, they're mainly nursing a hangover. But when they come away from Monaco, they look back at it and it feels like a special race.
Yeah, of course. And I think in terms of the Gen 3 Evo, what we saw is exciting. I think there's a much needed evidencing which is required for the Gen 3 car. Obviously, the travails of its early gestation are well known. But the interesting thing for me was speaking to some of the team principals who were all very pleased with the way that it's going, with the front powertrain kit being more active and the quicker spec of Hancocks that we're going to get for the next rule set, or the 2 years of the Gen 3 rule set. I think the drivers' feedback is crucial as well, because from what I hear, they tested in Mallorca back in November and much enjoyed or had a better feeling for the car generally. And look, if you've got a happy driver, then you've got a much more buoyant marketing weapon there, haven't you?
Yeah.
So the other thing which I found quite interesting was the fact that some of the team principals said, well, this is kind of where we should have been at the start of Gen 3. And you can argue the toss of that and how the project was managed and the knock-on from COVID and the supply issues and so forth. But there is a sort of general feeling that you're making up for lost ground. I mean, is that notion in your head and the other key stakeholders, that actually there's a bit of time been made up here for what Gen 3 should have been really a couple of years ago?
So again, I'm actually. Do you know what, Sam? I'm a year in, I think, in about a week's time or something like that. So I'm just coming up for my 1 year anniversary, and when I arrived in Formula E, I think there was a lot of noise around how challenging getting the Gen 3 car off the ground had been, and I think perhaps it hadn't lived up to the initial potential or expectation. Saying that, I also was there for the first season of Gen 3, and I think the quality of racing and the competitiveness of the racing was a big surprise to people. I think everyone was really pleased with how good and how close the racing was. But it had been a lot of effort, and there had been a lot of challenges getting the car to the point where it was ready to get on track. I think if you remember correctly, there was a discussion before Gen 3 about a Gen 2 Evo car as well, so kind of a mid-cycle evolution car in Gen 2, but because of lockdown and the supply chain issues and the silicon crisis and all the things that were going on at the time, the view was taken not to launch that, and I think that made the launch of the Gen 3 a bit harder. So, so to answer your question, I think, yeah, absolutely. The Gen 3 Evo car, we recognise had to be a pretty significant step change from the Gen 3. And that was a pretty big step change in terms of performance, opening up the front powertrain to provide all-wheel drive, the performance of the tyre, and dare I say it, as somebody that arrived fresh into it, making the car look a bit better. I personally wasn't a huge fan of the triangular nature, the wedge shape at the front of the car. Whilst it was very distinctive, and that's a good thing, I think it was starting to lose some of the sex appeal that comes from traditional styles of racing cars. So we had to correct all that stuff, and at the same time, it also had to be a bridge onto Gen 4. And as you know, lots of the spec is out there in the public domain for Gen 4. The Gen 4 car is going to be a significant step forward from the Gen 3 car, and I think the Gen 3 Evo provides a really nice bridge into it.
Well, you talked briefly about Jags 1-2 on track, Jeff, and then the day before we saw them commit to Gen 4. Significant announcement. They joined Nissan in the long-term future of Formula E. Thoughts on that? I mean, did they... I mean, manufacturers always need a bit of massaging and persuading. That's the nature of manufacturers in motorsport. But tell us about the last few weeks of negotiation. What were those discussions like, and what did Jaguar need to make that commitment for Gen 4?
So the timeline for Gen 4 works something like this. So we only recently opened up, just before the Tokyo race, we opened up for registration with the FIA. I say we, it's the FIA actually that you register with, but the FIA opened up for registration. And there's a window which is actually open until December for manufacturers in which to register. But I think realistically, the realistic window, because existing manufacturers want to get the technical spec early and get on with starting to produce information and data for the car. Realistically, you would hope they would register by the end of June. So that's probably the real window we're talking about. So we were a little surprised, actually, that Nissan went quite so early with the registration. We were delighted, but it, of course, made a lot of sense for them because of the Tokyo race being their home race. And then Jaguar, hot off the heels of that, wanted to capitalise, I think, on the fact that they had a lot of their partners coming to Monaco and the nature of the Monaco race and how famous it is. They wanted to take advantage of that. Now, my hope, Sam, is that as we move through the next few races, other manufacturers, existing manufacturers, will take the opportunity to use those races and the PR and the noise around the race weekend to also announce their registration for Gen 4. But like everything, and you've publicised them well, when you're asking teams and manufacturers to commit out what is effectively 6 years from now, so out to 2030, there are a lot of technical details you have to work through with them to get them comfortable to make those commitments. But thankfully, it feels that we're in a good place for that. So Nissan have gone already, Jaguar have gone already. In Tokyo, we also had the welcome announcement that Yamaha Lola coming into the championship from next season. So I would expect over the next few weeks to have a couple more manufacturers announce their registration. And then I think the ball is rolling and we have good momentum.
Well, a seamless transition into my next question there, Jeff. Bit of telepathy. Berlin next. Obviously, a very fertile ground for a potential Porsche announcement. What's the situation now? I mean, they're obviously one of the most high-profile and let's say, huge heritage of motorsport brands that exist. Massively important for them to join Jaguar and Nissan. And are you confident that they'll be able to do that shortly?
So all the conversations. So first of all, I agree with everything you said. Right. So Porsche, huge brand in automotive and in motorsport. Huge brand, an important brand for Formula E. They bring a lot of credibility to the championship, and they bring a lot of on-track performance to the championship, and some really high-quality personnel, whether that's drivers in Pascal and Antonio, or whether it's Florian and Thomas, who obviously oversee the motorsport teams. So they're really important to us. All the conversations we've been having with Porsche have been remarkably positive. I won't say too much in terms of my hopes and expectations around a registration announcement, but I think between Formula E and Porsche, we're in a very good place.
As ever in motorsport, time is against us, Jeff. We're going to rattle through a few AOPs,
You're not
as
going
they
to
call
whether
them.
cats or dogs, teas or coffee. You're not going to do those, are you?
No, we'll do that in a separate pod near Christmas time or something.
Okay.
But let's talk about Beth Paretta's role with Formula E. That's been announced as we speak, pretty much. Very interesting. She was at Monaco. Obviously, has got a great deal of experience in racing, mainly on the other side of the pond. Yeah. Talk us through that and how she's going to be added to the team. So,
I came across Beth, I guess about 6 months ago, something like that, and introduced by a mutual friend. We were actually having a conversation about other things. I think at the time we started talking about diversity in motorsport and how we could encourage more women into motorsport, specifically Formula E, get more women in the seat to test the car. So that's where our conversation started. Obviously, Beth has Paretta Autosport, so she has an Indycar team. She's very, very experienced, very well thought of across the FIA. I think she sits on the Women in Motorsport Council for the FIA. She's in Motorsports Hall of Fame, very well connected, ex-OEM background as well. So Beth and I started talking about kind of diversity in motorsport, but very quickly I realised just how super credible she is and how talented she is and how much energy she's got. And we were thinking about a role in our organisation that could work more closely into the FIA on sporting and technical, and also build even stronger relationships with existing manufacturers and teams, but also potentially bring in some new manufacturers to the championship. And I thought Beth could be a fabulous candidate for that. So Alberto, our chief championship officer, met her separately. He felt exactly the same way. And then we managed to persuade Beth that this would be a great move for her. And Beth's all in. She's moving to the UK. She was there in Monaco to see the race up close and personal, already starting to talk to various teams and manufacturers. I just think she's a super, super talented executive that will bring an awful lot to our business.
And we're seeing a bit more long-awaited diversity on the track as well at Berlin. Jeff Marta Garcia at ERT and Alice Powell, who is going to be driving for Envision, well-known face in the paddock through various roles. I know this is a deep sort of interest of yours to try and get more diversity into the championship. So can we take these announcements as proof that you're going to be making more inroads in this area?
So it's a great question, Sam, and let me give you a quite expansive answer on it. And when we talk about more diversity into Formula E, look, I think it's easy for me to keep saying diversity into motorsport, but sadly I don't control all of motorsport. So what I'm really talking about is Formula E and the role we can play in it. That's diversity in its broadest sense. So different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different nationalities, different genders. It's just in its broadest sense. But I think in particular, there has been a focus on gender diversity. Now, the hypothesis that I came into Formula E with, and it's largely unproven actually, but the hypothesis is that men and women can compete equally in Formula E. That's the hypothesis. The challenge is that if you look at the funnel from kind of first getting an FIA racing license down to racing in a world championship like Formula E, I think about 98% of license holders are men. So simply the maths are very difficult to go all the way through the funnel from the very top, where you're one of those license holders as a 2% license holder as a woman, right the way through to find a seat in something like Formula E. So we have to make some changes to really get more women into the seats to test the cars to see if they can be competitive. So a few of the things we're doing. One is we're trying to encourage more role models into the organisation, people like Beth Paretta. Second thing we're trying to do is find ways with the FIA of getting more women into the seats for rookie testing. So you've got Marta and Alice, which is great because they'll test in Berlin. But we're actually discussing with the FIA is as we move forward to Valencia, is there an opportunity for exclusive women's rookie testing? So a separate day or a separate session where it's only women in the seat on track, supported by the teams. So we've got lots and lots of ideas, lots of things we're looking at. And I don't know if this is a scoop, Sam, I doubt it, because everything's out in the open in Formula E, I realise. But for the Gen 4 car, that will be the first car we introduce with power-assisted steering. Because one of the other hurdles, what we recognise is, 45 minutes of racing in a Formula E car requires a lot of physical upper body strength, neck, chest, arms, which does sometimes put women at a disadvantage. So the Gen 4 car will actually come with power-assisted steering.
Yeah, and you'd say about time, really. Something like that is, I know it's not a simple thing to do, and I spoke to Xavier Mestalampinon about a sort of similar issues at Monaco on Saturday. And that actually derived from what we're seeing with these hand injuries with the Gen 3 car. And it does happen throughout racing, but it seems to be happening more, and I know it's a separate issue, but it does seem to be happening more throughout Formula E than other championships. But just going back to what you said there, Jeff, about the power-assisted steering, this is something which has been talked about for a long time, and not every, but the majority of young, talented female drivers, particularly Tatiana Calderon and Simona de Silvestro previously, and then some of the W Series and Formula Academy drivers recently have said that it is a no-brainer and will actually accelerate the potential for women to compete on an even basis or a more even basis than men in racing. And I think we should generally celebrate that parity. So that's a good move. Let's move on, Jeff, to some of the visibility. I think I mentioned to you at Monaco last weekend that Formula E seemed to be everywhere in and around Monaco. That is, I mean, it's not always been the case. We go to these city centres and we talk about permanent tracks or going to more permanent tracks and more city centre street tracks. And we know the difficulties of putting these races on in city centres. It's a completely different beast in Monaco, of course. It's a principality. And you've obviously got major support from Prince Albert of Monaco, who I know is quite a passionate advocate of EV racing and motorsport generally. But that visibility, how are you appraising what has been achieved in the almost 12 months that you've been there? Just trying to, you initially said making a lot more noise. Visually, you can see it. And I'm just wondering what you make of the eyeballs that are on the championship now, and all the data that you collate after each race, and the sort of trajectory of that at the moment.
Yeah, so look, when I joined Sam, and I think we talked fairly early on, forget where it was, Jakarta or Portland or somewhere. So my observation when I arrived was pretty good product. So the product of Formula E was good. The Gen 3 car, lots of competitive racing, the tailwind of electrification, good brands in the championship, good teams in the championship, but nowhere near enough noise around the championship. So very early on, part of my strategy was to create much more noise, as much noise as humanly possible. And I think that fell into a number of buckets. So there's a kind of a quantity of noise, and then a quality of the noise. And I think from a quantity point of view, that's really which TV broadcasters are we working with? We added 40 TV broadcasters over the last 12 months, and some quite interesting ones. Roku in the US, Fuji TV in Japan, CCTV in China, TNT Sports in the UK. So we've added a number of broadcasters just to give us a greater volume of noise. And then there's the quality of noise, and that's things like you've just referenced. So, making sure that when we're racing in locations, it's much more obvious from a marketing and PR perspective that we're there. It's introducing more and more celebrities that can open us up to new audiences. So that's why you see people like Usain Bolt in Mexico and Sun Kang in Tokyo, and you saw Anthony Joshua in Monaco. And not just there walking up and down the grid with a glass of champagne smiling, but they're actually playing a role, getting stuck in the garages. Usain drove the car, Anthony in the safety car, talking to the drivers, talking about their mental preparation. Sun Kang doing his kind of Formula E take on Tokyo Drift and creating content out of the Tokyo race. So just exposing ourselves to a broader fan base and a broader potential audience. And I think if I look at the data, Sam, I think when I started, I may get this slightly wrong, so apologies, but when I started, I think we had a fan base of probably 265 million fans around the world. The latest data we looked at said that's now up to about 380 million fans around the world. Our TV reach has started this year fabulously well. So our cumulative TV views is up about 25 to 30% year on year. So very strong TV performance. And the sentiment is also very strong. So the people looking at the series think it's more innovative than before, more exciting than before. And we're just building a much stronger social and digital profile as well. If I look at something like the Unplugged series, which I think you featured in actually, Sam, but if I look at the Unplugged series...
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my royalty check, Jeff, for that.
Yeah, you might be waiting a long time, mate.
Second class post.
I think they're 5 episodes, 15 minutes long. Just digital views alone for that, I think, are up over 110 million digital views. So these are the numbers that Formula E has never seen before. So we have great momentum, but the key to great momentum is keeping it. So we just have to keep pushing on. And I think Gen 3 Evo gives us a great opportunity to push on because of the performance statistics around the car. So keep doing more of the same, I think.
One very final quick one, Jeff. Often a lot of our listeners and readers on the race are left a little confused with some of the data, the superlatives that come out. Generally, it's a global championship. It's a world championship. So that you've got a big audience in Indonesia and Japan and in the States, and there's some great stuff coming out of there. In the UK, with TNT and the work they're doing, with the talent team that they have presenting and the broadcasting that they have, the figures are modest. And you knew that was going to be the case. And it's also a subscription-based media platform too. When are you going to review that? Because whenever I speak to fans, they always say, look, we're not subscribers to TNT. We're not going to invest in that. It's a fine balance, isn't it? Because you want to get terrestrial coverage that hasn't come so far this season.
Yeah.
How is that strategy playing out, and when are you reviewing it, and what could be the future for UK audiences and fans to engage with Formula E Live?
So, first thing I would say is you're right in that we're an international racing series. So, because we're based in Hammersmith in London, so we're quite UK centric, and you're based in the UK. I think we talk about the UK a lot, and first of all, you're right. We have a very big international market. We have over 100 million fans in China. Indonesia is huge for us. The Japanese numbers were absolutely incredible. Then you've got Mexico, South Africa, Brazil. These are all big markets for us, and big markets for our manufacturer partners. Really strong performance growth in North America, in the USA. So very pleased with that. But you're right. There are probably two markets. You know me, Sam, by the way. I'm always super straight up. There are two markets where we have more challenges, and they are the UK and Germany, for different reasons. So Germany, we had a contract with ProSieben, the German broadcaster. That came to an end earlier this season. We're now partnered with DF1, who are a new broadcaster in Germany. So they are literally starting from scratch. They're a free-to-air broadcaster, but they're having to build an audience. So that has meant smaller viewer numbers in Germany. The UK is a different situation. So the UK, we moved from Channel 4, who are a free-to-air broadcaster here in the UK, and we moved on to TNT Sports. And I would absolutely endorse what you just said. I don't think the quality of production has ever been better. So I think they've done an amazing job with their broadcasting team of people like Jermaine Jenner, Nicky Shields, David Coulthard, Radzi, Billy Munger. They put together a brilliant broadcasting team. The on-screen presentation is fantastic, but they are a paid broadcaster. And that means there are people who were watching our coverage previously that don't subscribe to TNT Sport and therefore aren't watching it now. So the challenge for me is how do I try and get the best of both worlds? So how do I continue to get that brilliant investment from TNT, for fans to know exactly where to watch the programming, because we want consistency of the broadcaster, but at the same time try and still provide a product for people that can't afford the investment of £30 odd a month, or I think it's about £10 if you're an existing Sky subscriber, so they can still enjoy the racing. And actually, that is a live conversation that we're having with our friends at Warner Brothers Discovery. They actually have a number of free-to-air channels within their portfolio, and we are discussing with them whether there's a possibility to create some race exposure through their free-to-air channels, not just exclusively on their paid channels. But nothing to announce just yet, but there are live conversations ongoing.
Very good. Okay, Jeff, well, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. And we'll catch up at Berlin. Many thanks.
My absolute pleasure. Yeah, see you in Berlin. Thanks, Sam.
Always good to hear from Jeff. I think he's starting to really make an impact on the championship now. Obviously, coming in mid-season as he did last year, it's difficult to really change anything. I think with the Evo car coming in for next season, as you say, and these new manufacturers coming into Gen 4, obviously what he's got to do now is nail that calendar and those TV deals, and job done, right? Dead easy.
Well, I had to ask him about the TNT thing, because as much as Formula E say they've got 350 million fans and so forth, we need to understand what the
I can admit that none of them are on the race, if that's the case.
Well, maybe we just need to do a better job and not
maybe I need a better correspondent.
Or not have Bird's budgerigars in the background tweeting.
Yeah, if anyone's picked up on that, I'm actually recording this poolside in my apartment in Miami. I'm out here for the Grand Prix, so apologies if it's making you think like I'm in an Avery.
And are you in your Don Johnson white tuxedo?
At the moment, I'm in shorts and t-shirt, but I do have some rolled-up jacket sleeves ready to don for an event this afternoon.
Excellent. We just need Danny Sullivan to make a cameo on this podcast, don't we? And everything's set. So
we'd have won it podcasting if we can make that happen.
Very good. Yeah, a good chat with Jeff, and I think that there's a lot of positivity in the championship as it stands. I think a lot will be defined by the calendar, which is going to be announced in June, or a draft calendar anyway. I do know that there's Formula E executives off to Los Angeles in the next week or so. So there's no secret that they're looking at a race in LA. And then there's the potential thorny issue of starting the season next or this December in Sao Paulo, which I think we've already reported that is likely to be the case.
Yeah, we definitely discussed that before.
But the crux of it,
though. I like it being, the race is taking place when other motorsport isn't.
Yeah, and the crux of it, unfortunately, could be a clash with the FIA Gala, which doesn't sound particularly troublesome. But
you're not the world champion until you picked up your trophy at the Gala.
Of course, yeah, there is that. There's a lot of formalities with that, and I think they're juggling with that at the moment. December the 15th, I believe, is the possible starting date for the Formula E season.
Would they not have the Gala in Sao Paulo, or am I being far too sensible there?
That'd be great, wouldn't it? Yeah, well, that would just solve all the problems. Take it over to Sao Paulo. I mean, they had it in Baku last year, so
it's been in Qatar before. It's not always in Geneva.
There's a lot more racing heritage in Sao Paulo than there is in Baku, isn't there? I mean,
there we go.
We're talking.
I might have come up with a solution there. You can have that.
There you go. And we're talking on the 1st of May as well. 30 years on from the great Ayrton Senna leaving us.
There we go.
I mean, far from us to organise official galas on our humble podcast, though, VW.
We should know our place, quite frankly.
Well, we should, but we don't.
Well, brilliant. Very good, Sam. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens at Tempelhof. And talking of the events of May the 1st, on our sister podcast, and Colossally That's History, there's a 3-parter that they're currently in the middle of, looking back over the events of that weekend and the impact that had on motorsport. I would urge you to give it a listen. Richard Williams and Matt Bishop doing a stunning job of bringing these old motorsport stories to life with some fabulous anecdotes, some brilliant tangents, and just all-round good chat. So, yeah, please check that out. Of course, our other podcast on F1, MotoGP, IndyCar, and remember to go to the-race for all your Formula E news. So thank you very much, and goodbye.
The Athletic.